New developments in a sensational murder case that rocked the nation. Kennedy cousin Michael Skakel was convicted in 2002 of fatally beating his teenage neighbor in their Greenwich, Connecticut neighborhood way back in 1975. So it was a really old case to begin with. 15-year-old Martha Moxley was bludgeoned to death with a golf club. Her body was found in her backyard, and the case went unsolved for decades. Now Skakel is back in court asking for a new trial, claiming that his lawyer, there he is, well-known defense attorney Mickey Sherman, was not competent, a charge that Sherman vigorously denies. Let's bring in our legal panel, defense attorney and former prosecutor David Schwartz and former prosecutor Faith Jenkins. Good to see you both. Faith, talk to us about the legal standard that Skakel must achieve here in order to get a new trial.
It's not going to be easy because you can't just come in and argue on appeal that I had a bad lawyer, so I get a new trial. You actually have to show what your lawyer did and how it was deficient, and that his actions actually fell below the professional standard for lawyers and how they could conduct themselves during trial. So it's not easy because judges generally defer to a lawyer's expertise in the strategy that they choose to use during trials and how they try to defend their witnesses. So it's not easy.
David, full disclosure, Mickey Sherman a friend of mine. I've known him for 20 some odd years, and he is a terrific lawyer. I've seen him in action time and time again. So what do you think of this?
Well, he's a friend of mine also, and I think he is a terrific lawyer, and he certainly passionately defended Michael Skakel. His son is also a good lawyer. He was involved with the case as well. You know, the standard, there's a very high bar here, and I don't even think we're close. We're not even close. He passionately defended Michael Skakel. Skakel claims that he was joking around and goofing around with the press. You know what? Deep down inside, he's like every other trial attorney. He was sort of nauseous during that trial and was intense.
You know what, Faith? The material accusations against Sherman are as follows: that he failed to investigate another possible suspect, he failed to track down an alibi witness for his client, and he failed to track down other witnesses who could rebut the alleged confession by Michael Skakel when he was at this reform school up in Maine years and years earlier.
So those are Skakel's really best arguments here, because you can't just argue my lawyer was deficient. You have to actually show that there was some kind of prejudice, and because of the things that his lawyer did or did not do, it perhaps affected the outcome of the case.
Failure to do these things would have resulted in a not guilty conviction.
Outcome.
I mean,
yes,
you have to be prescient to know that.
Well, here's the thing. And so that's why Skakel's best argument that he would have here is to be able to produce a witness and say, this is the witness that I wanted Sherman to find, and he did not find him. He didn't do enough to find him, and as a result, I've been convicted, and I'm guilty, and I'm
David,
actually
it's almost
innocent.
as if he has to prove actual innocence here.
Well, that's a standard also. See, that's what I would try to prove. It's not ineffective assistance of counsel. The counsel's not obligated to find every single possibility out there. However, if there is a new witness, it's called newly discovered evidence.
Right.
And if that witness goes towards that newly discovered evidence, that could go towards actual innocence.
But one of the guys that is so-called newly discovered or failed to be discovered properly and investigated way back when is a guy who's now invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. He ain't talking.
Yep. I mean, look, he's not talking. You got to have the evidence. You got to have the affidavits. You got to have newly discovered evidence.
Here's what troubled me about the trial, which I covered. There was never any DNA evidence, and there were DNA tests done that placed Skakel at the scene of the crime. There was never any other physical evidence, and the chief witness against him was this most nefarious heroin addict who literally died before trial, so they used a document, his preliminary hearing testimony, in which he admitted on cross-examination he was high while he was giving the testimony. I mean, that's the worst kind of evidence. I was shocked that the judge ever allowed it.
No physical evidence. Here is why Skakel was convicted in this case. He was convicted because of his own words, because of what he told people over the years, allegedly, because of what he allegedly told people over the years about his involvement in this crime. You're right. Like, in terms of physical evidence in this day and age, when people are looking for DNA, fingerprints, videotape in order to convict anyone now, I mean, look at the trials that we have going on right now that are never ending because juries want to have that physical physical evidence.
He should get a new trial, but not based on ineffective assistance of counsel.
And speaking of dead witnesses, there was another one that hurt Skakel in the following way. He was the founder of the Elan School, the reform school up in Maine, who was prepared to take the witness stand and say, this kid never confessed. And I was there during these so-called psychology sessions in which he allegedly did it. I mean, all the people at this reform school are inherently nefarious and untrustworthy witnesses.
And they weren't, listen, and the problem was at the end of the day, the jurors chose who they wanted to believe.
Right.
Skakel did not testify on his own behalf.
And that may have been a mistake.
That's another big issue here because juries, that's the elephant in the room.
And Dorothy Moxley, who's a wonderful woman, the mother of Martha Moxley, sat there in the first row right in front of the jury every single day. And I think that had an impact. And,
sympathy always has an impact. And sympathy is always a big part of every single case. And I think the jury convicted in a lot of ways on sympathy for the family. And that's wrong. That's
well, Mickey Sherman took the witness stand the other day and defended his actions as a lawyer. So we'll wait and see what happened. But one of the things he said is, I still believe absolutely in the innocence of Michael Skakel. And, you know, having sat through some of the trial, much of the trial, and the prelim, he's probably right. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Good to see you both. Faith Jenkins, David Schwartz. Good to see you. Thanks.